Welcome back to Cal Lutheran's student news publication, The Echo. This is our bi-weekly podcast, and this is Caroline Asen, the editor-in-chief, speaking. Recently, California Lutheran University has decided to move from Blackboard to Canvas as its platform for instruction. To speak more about this decision, Cassidy joins us again on the podcast. In your article, you mentioned the idea of changing the Canvas has been discussed throughout the years. What prompted this official change from Blackboard to Canvas?
So during my interview with Azizi, he mentioned a couple of times that the University of Cal Lutheran had talked about switching the learning management system from Blackboard to a different learning management system, which there were three options, and they were Blackboard, Ultra, Canvas, and Desire to Learn. However, since the contract was officially going to expire this year in June, they decided to wait until the very end into finally finding a new learning management system, which now we all know is going to be Canvas. However, Blackboard Ultra was also an option, but Canvas had a lot more features, and Canvas is also used by many universities and community colleges around California, so a lot more people are familiar with Canvas, which is one of the main reasons why the university decided to go with Canvas.
What was the process like deciding to switch?
The process of switching from Blackboard to Canvas took several months. They designed a task force that was in charge of finding the best learning management system to suit the needs for all staff, faculty, and students. There was a lot of questioning into play on what system could be the best for students. So one thing that was in high consideration was how and what is the easiest platform for professors to use. And one thing, as I mentioned in question 1, was that a lot of professors that work in other institutions use Canvas already, so there's already the sense of familiarity, and there's also the sense for transfer students to have the familiarity of having already used Canvas.
According to your sources, how has faculty and staff reacted to this change? Will it make it easier or harder on them in any way?
One thing that I gathered during my interviews was that staff and faculty reacted very positive with the change from Blackboard to Canvas. A lot of staff was in favor of switching to Canvas other than using Blackboard Ultra or using Desire to Learn.
Are there any projected difficulties or challenges with this change, whether it be with the tools and services offered through Blackboard currently or with its users?
So from my knowledge and what I learned from interviews, there is no projected difficulties from the switch from Blackboard to Canvas yet predicted. Everything seems to be set and in line for the transition to be as smooth as possible for staff, faculty, and students.
Will there be training for faculty and staff to help with this change, especially for those unfamiliar with the platform? Also, will there be resources available or training for students who are also unfamiliar with Canvas?
Training will be provided for staff and faculty. There will be workshops, there will be Zoom meets, and the office where Azizi works, which is the technology office, will be open all the time for staff or faculty to come in and ask questions. As for students, Canvas provides a module for learning how to work the system. So the change will be relatively easy for everyone.
With the change, will students, faculty, and staff have access to past assignments, classes, and other information on Blackboard currently?
Even with the change, there will be specific people from Canvas coming to Cal Lutheran to individually help every professor, faculty, and staff to directly switch over every single document from Blackboard to Canvas. So everything will practically be the same. All the same information will be provided, and the content will be identical.
When is this change to Canvas projected to occur, and when will it be first used for classes?
The official change from Blackboard to Canvas will be by the end of May. Their fall summer courses will be taught fully on Canvas.
Is there anything else listeners should know about this change from Blackboard to Canvas?
So one thing that I think all listeners should know from the switch from Blackboard to Canvas is how much work was put into this process. There were a lot of people behind it, It wasn't just a one-time thing. It took a lot of work and several hours to assemble everyone to agree with the change. And I personally believe the change will be positive for all staff and faculty. And most faculty even agree with the positive aspect of the change. And we will now be up to date with our learning management system. So there are a lot of pros to this change.
Also joining us today is Jazzy, an Echo reporter, to talk about the Lending Library on Faculty Street. How did Reverend Melissa Maxwell Doherty and Reverend Scott Maxwell Doherty come up with the Lending Library and its design?
Scott Maxwell Doherty said that the Lending Library was started because he and Melissa Maxwell Doherty had been to lending libraries while on vacation before COVID. And since Melissa is a voracious reader, she asked Scott to build one of their own in front of their house with the Dolphin mailbox on Faculty Street. They funded the project themselves, and Scott said he designed the roof of their lending library to be based on the roof line of the Ullman Commons and some of Cal Lutheran's newer residence halls. Melissa said that her colleague gifted her a sign with calligraphy that said Lending Library to add to the design.
Why did they begin the Lending Library?
Scott Maxwell Doherty said, "I hope that for anyone who walks or drives by the Lending Library, that it brings a little bit of joy. If it brings a little joy, we're in good shape."
Who does the Lending Library serve?
Melissa Maxwell Doherty said that the Lending Library is there for anyone in the community. She has seen students, dog walkers, neighbors, and kids bring and pick up books there. She said that students can borrow the books or keep them. Melissa said she believes that the best use of students' time would be to sit and read a novel that is not connected to a syllabus. She said that can be a very restful activity and could really enhance our students' sense of well-being. Melissa says that novels are usually what is available there, but I also want to note that textbooks have been seen there as well.
For your article, you also spoke to librarians about accessibility. How does the Lending Library and other resources help with accessibility, especially for students?
Megan Quast, librarian and head of Collection Management Services, said, "No one should feel like they are excluded from a class or career trajectory based on affordability. A course reserve collection or a student-led initiative regarding access to textbooks means that there are options open for students who might otherwise feel limited in their academic endeavors." Leanna Pagano, librarian and manager of resource sharing and course reserves, said that Course Reserves is an open education resource with free materials for readers. She said that the Pearson Library makes copies of textbooks available based on donations and inquiries from students or faculty who implement open education resource textbooks in their classes because they recognize that the cost of textbooks is not always feasible for students to purchase. While a lot of textbooks in the Pearson Library can only be used during their operating hours, Pagano said that if the book a student needs is a part of a 3-day checkout collection, that book can leave the library. Quast said that if students are looking for zero-cost classes, they can ask professors if they use an open educational resource or if their required reading is available at the library or if copies will be available soon.
Your sources touched on pros and cons of the Lending Library and resources in Pearson Library. Can you tell us a little bit more about these pros and cons?
About whether to visit the Pearson Library or the Lending Library to find a textbook, Quast said it's weighing pros and cons. There are some students there which may have previously had negative interactions at a library before they got here. There are also some folks who maybe aren't familiar with the library and what can happen here. Also, the Lending Library on Faculty is closer to the residence halls. You know, there are a number of benefits for these student-led initiatives in places outside the library. It needs to be what's best for you. However, there are limitations to it in the sense that it's kind of a guessing game. And when we're talking about textbooks, which are things you need to accomplish your assignments and be successful in a course, it can be really difficult when you don't know if that point of access is going to be reliable. Whereas with a library and catalog where you can search and see where it is and if it's available, there's a little bit more consistency and reliability from that point, which is a value we can bring.
Is there anything else listeners should know about in terms of the Lending Library or about Pearson Library's resources to aid in accessibility for students?
Because ebook licensing costs are unsustainable for the Pearson Library long term, Pagano said the library is trying to find a way to meet the needs of all students. Pagano also said the library would be interested in partnering with student government again to have another textbook drive.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Look out for another podcast from us soon.